A moment later, with 3 clanking sounds, the collars were tossed from his belt, and I absorbed them, making sure to keep my eye out for any harmful effects that might have been able to affect my dungeon. Knowledge flooded into me, quite in-depth knowledge at that. I finally had a semi-grasp on the necromancer rune system. The runes seemed to be sketchy. They were the same runes, according to my absorption, but they were written differently, much like English to Japanese. They spelled out the same thing, but in different ways. I finally found a reference point in the origin point of the target. The rune for person was the same, if slightly altered, but I was able to figure the rest out from there. It seemed that the necromancers borrowed some knowledge from the demons, if I understood the magic correctly. Unholy mana seemed to be a combination of dark and demonic. I wasn't sure if that was only in the beginning, or if it was still like that because there were quite a few necromancers by that time, according to Louella and the Marquis. It seemed to me that the mana had grown into its own branch, much like a mutation in genetics becoming a dominant gene if the people desired it. I put that aside for when I had access to more information, which would hopefully be soon. Then I looked at the nearly dead necromancer. Now that I had a basic understanding of unholy mana and magic, I could see that he was trying to turn himself undead while maintaining his intelligence. A lich, I suppose. I couldn't have that. I made a table to work on the collar nearby. I pulled up the collar schematic in my mind, then looked through it to make sure that it had me designated as the master. I also made it out of mithril and light metal, as that would channel my mana better than the dark blood steel stuff it had been made of before. I understood from the knowledge I'd gained that to make the steel, they had to sacrifice a virgin. I didn't feel like using that today. I reworked a few more sections with my own script and adapted the enchantments here and there. Mainly it appeared the collar was designed for dungeon core avatars, so there were whole sections that dealt with keeping us stuck in our physical bodies. Once I was satisfied with the rework, and having looked over the schematics at least a dozen times, I decided it was ready. As I looked at the collar, I felt that the attempt I'd made with the leg was child's play for the person who designed the collar. After I read the runes in the collar, I was worried that I may have put Reed into a coma. There were certain limitations in using the collar, but for my purposes it would work quite well. I moved over to the man, who was still trying to fix his body. I probably took half an hour working on the collar, and he had only managed to fix his neck and part of his chest. He was actually rebuilding his body so that it functioned, for the most part, normally. I remade my avatar and grabbed the collar from the table, then grabbed the top of his head to lift him off the ground. I wasn't usually a mean person, but I really had little tolerance for my enemies. The man started, but it was literally a dying man's last efforts. The golden metal with green circuit-like designs were roughly attached to the man's neck. I was expecting it, but the man started to scream bloody murder when red sparks started bouncing off his body. I think he realized what had happened a moment later, because right after that the sparks died down and he stopped screaming. It seemed the dungeon had designated him as one of mine now, and mana started to heal his wounds. I made sure to restrict the mana from helping further than healing his wounds, though. This left him with a half-lich, half-living body. I contemplated tossing him to the ground, but decided to set him down, as he really couldn't fight me now. After a few minutes, he seemed to have healed enough to be responsive. He opened his eyes and took in his surroundings. I watched to make sure that everything was working correctly. He finished looking around, then directed his gaze at me. "Master," he said with evident hatred in his voice. I saw his face twinge in pain for a moment. "Welcome to Dungeon Automata, my humble abode," I said in an annoying voice that I hoped equaled his hatred. "How about we start simple? What's your name?" There were another few sparks of red before he finally spoke. "Rakras."